Hello, this is a live stream, and I'm about to try to start it dually over on Facebook. So give me just a second as I go over there. And here I go. I'm going to click go live. So now it's counting down. Hello, it looks like I'm live on both Facebook and YouTube. So if you're on my Facebook, you're watching me, and maybe you'll see this later on YouTube. I don't really expect people to really watch me on YouTube, but hey, look, it says I've got one person, so we'll see. So I wanted to share some thoughts just off the top of my head. So hopefully this won't be a very long video about, I don't want to see my bed over there in the background, about what's going on with this crazy election and the attitude of Christians in regards to it and to what's going on. Trying to make sure that's completely clean. So naturally, because this is a live stream, you're not seeing it edited like normally I edit out dead time. I put in the graphics. I don't have any of that going on this time because I'm just here talking. And there'll be, obviously there'll be some dead time because I'm going to be looking up a few scriptures and I'm going to be referring to my notes and stuff because I just typed up something and I don't know if I'll read it all or not. So basically, the title of it should maybe be, what is the point of government? I feel like the main issue with what's going on in people voting for Trump and being so angry at Christians who are voting for Biden, and people voting for Biden being so angry at Christians who are voting for Trump, is kind of that it really, again, comes down to a difference in worldview. Ultimately, people claiming to be Christians don't all see the world in the same way. And with that, out of that kind of comes how we view government. So, there's never just two sides to any issue. So I'm going to kind of break this down into two camps. And you may be like, well, I don't really feel like I'm exactly one or the other. I kind of am a mix. But I guess I'm just trying to make it easier for people to identify with something. So the same is true of the question, what is the purpose of government? But for this video, like I said, I've divided it. And so I feel like it kind of comes down to two basic points of view of the world and points of view of the nature of people. So there are, on one side, there's those who believe people are innately bad, selfish, self-serving, willing to gyp the other for self-gain. And out of that, the government cannot be trusted, and the law and order is basically the kind of position they take. Get this table out of the way. I'm trying to get it out of my way so it won't keep bumping up against my chair, making these noises. So they basically see the government, this is kind of maybe people who are libertarians, even if a libertarian is not religious and they say, well, I think people are good individually, but mobs are bad, and the government is basically just a big mob, and that's why you can't trust a big government. So even if people who don't necessarily claim to think that humans individually are good, they're kind of still the same kind of people. I'm flushed. I'm getting nervous already. This is just nerves. This is not a disease, and I'm not going to die. Maybe it'll go away during this video. Maybe it won't. But so those are the kind of people that even if they trust, they might think people individually are good, but in groups get groupthink and they're bad. And then on the other side, you have those who believe people are innately good and all evil manifestations are from a lack of love or understanding. And the government can be trusted, and they kind of take the social safety net side. They think the government should provide all these things for us to help us in our lives, and we can trust them with that because we're good and they're good if we hire if we elect the right people, not Donald Trump, but good people into government. Whereas on the other side, they're kind of like, no, even if you get good people in government, when they're all working together, they're ultimately going to serve themselves and they're not going to be able to be trusted anymore. So whatever good they were individually doing, they're not really doing en masse. So that's kind of how I see that you've got these two sort of camps. And so you've got people who claim to be Christians who fall into two different sides. Now, and so the ones who might fall on the side of law and order, they might have voted for Trump. They don't necessarily think Trump is necessarily a good person or a Christian, but They see the things that he's doing as being protecting individual freedoms, even individual freedoms for people of other faiths, individual freedoms for people of no faith, for atheists, whoever. They think that that's what he's doing. And so even if they're Christians and they can't justify his behavior as Christian behavior as a person individually for himself, they see the things that he's doing, the way that he's led this country, to be providing for the freedoms that all people of all faiths want, and to be upholding other things that they believe are important, like, you know, he hasn't passed anything against abortion or anything, but appointing judges who are constitutionalists, who uphold conservative values, and fighting for peace between Israel and all these other Middle Eastern countries, which is unheard of until his administration came in. So there's those things and they'll look at the talk of, well, he's a racist and he's evil, he's vile, and they'll say, first of all, I don't know how much of that can be believed, but second of all, you know, that's not why I'm voting for him. And here's the problem. A lot of those people will then use the morality argument against the candidate from the other side. They'll be like, well, Bill Clinton was a horrible person. Hillary Clinton was a horrible person. It's like, well, you know, if you're going to use policies for Trump as the reason you're voting for Trump, then you got to use policies of the Democrats as the reason you're not voting for the Democrats. You can't use morals. I mean, you can't claim that Trump's got some sort of level of morality that the others don't. Someone that voted for Biden said to me, Trump has single-handedly ruined the image of Christians during his presidency. And I want to say, I don't think Trump's a Christian. I mean, he might have become a Christian sometime during the last 4 years, but I don't necessarily know that he's a Christian, and therefore it's not his job to protect the image of Christians. And it neither is his responsibility if Christians have come to look bad in these past 4 years. That's the fault of Christians. And so here I'm going to kind of separate out the Christians, because we are divided, right? Because some people voted for Trump or Jorgensen, you know, and some people voted for Biden, and and then of course, like I say, some Christians voted for Jorgensen, and that's not a middle of the road moral thing. Again, that kind of comes down to people who don't trust the government. They voted for Jorgensen because they thought, you know, I want everyone to have individual freedoms. I don't necessarily trust people in big groups, but I trust individuals to make decisions for themselves and take care of themselves. But why do Christians vote one way or the other? And again, I think it kind of comes into this separation, that some Christians hold to the view that humans are innately evil, and I think that's biblical. Even Trump is evil, you know? And then some kind of hold to this view that humans are good and we just make bad choices, and Jesus died on the cross to save us from our sin, but maybe they see sin as some sort of trap. We make mistakes, we kind of fall into it. But then on the other side, these Christians are like, no. We love our sin. We're evil. We're in rebellion against God. And that's what Jesus had to die on the cross to save us from. And we are saved not when we just open ourselves up to his love. We're saved when we repent and ask for forgiveness of sins. And you may not think that has anything to do with who you vote for, but I feel like it does. And I would love comments on this, and I would love for people to give me feedback, because this is nuanced. And what I'm trying to get to is that nobody is a two-dimensional person who just thinks one way or just thinks the other. Some people voted for Biden. They don't really like a lot of the things the Democrats stand for, but they like Biden, or they like some of the things. They think that he won't incite more violence, and they think Trump is inciting violence. Some people over here voted for Trump. They don't necessarily like Trump as a person, but they think he's governed well, and they like the policies that he's pushing, and they want to see more of it. And so you've got, like I say, you've got people who, and it's all this, it's a spectrum. It's not just like we're in this camp and we all think this way. We're in this camp and we all think this way. The problem really is media and social media. Media makes us all seem one-sided. And in social media, when you're interacting with me and I'm interacting with you, we tend to see each other as one-sided. We tend to say, because you did this one thing or you said this one thing, therefore I think that you think this and this and this and this. I think that you see the world this way, this way, this way, this way. And I might be right about one of those things, but I might not be right about most of those things about you. And vice versa. You may be right in calling out something that I see or believe based on something I post, but that doesn't mean you know very much about me or what I think or my reasons for what I do, why I do what I did. I'm going to read just a couple of scriptures. The scriptural view of government, this is important to note, focuses only on the law and order. It doesn't focus. Social safety nets were not in existence in biblical times. So there's like no public education, no welfare, no health care. That kind of stuff is completely foreign. So I think that's kind of probably also one of the problems. Christians now think that the government should be doing the things that we as Christians should be doing, the things that churches should be doing. They want to put this on the government because they're like, well, as a Christian, I say that this is the right thing to do. But on the flip side, you got Christians who say, no, I think it's the right thing to do, but it's not the government's job. It shouldn't have ever been the government's job. And it comes all the way back to, can we trust the government? Can we even trust the government to do it well, to take care of us without controlling us? And these folks over here say, no, I want the freedom. Don't take care of me. Give me the freedom. I'll take, let the chips fall where they may. I'll take it. I'll take the fall as long as I have my freedom to make my choice. And over here, they're like, no, catch me when I fall, even if it means you then bring the net up and carry me over here to some other place that wasn't my choice. So in 1 Samuel chapter 8, and here's where I would normally cut out dead time because I'm flipping through my Bible. But hey, I got there rather quickly. So in 1 Samuel chapter 8, Israel asks for their first king. And this was prophesied before. I feel like Moses was talking to God about it, and he was saying several books ago, like, they're going to want a king. They're not going to be satisfied. And then you go all the way through Joshua and Judges, and then Joshua is the first judge, and Samuel is the last judge. And after Samuel, the people ask for a king. So, starting in verse 4, 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 4. So all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, you are old, and your sons do not follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have. But when they said, give us a king to lead us, this displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord, and the Lord told him, listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you that they have rejected. They have rejected me as their king, as they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day. It's been hundreds of years at this point. Forsaking me and serving other gods, so they are doing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly, and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights. And this is what we see in government today. Even in a constitutional republic like we have, people who want to vote for the government to have more power, this is what he's about to say to them is why I don't want the government to have more power. Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking him for a king. He said, this is what the king who will reign over you will claim as his rights. He will take your sons and make them serve with his chariots and horses, and they will run in front of his chariots. Some he will assign to be commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s, and others to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and still others to make weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his attendants. He will take 1/10 of your grain and of your vintage and give it to his officials in attendance, man, I wish the government just took 10%. Imagine that would be like heaven, right? All we got to pay in taxes is 10%. When that day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king you have chosen, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. No, they said, we want a king over us. Then we'll be like all the other nations with a king to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles. So, this kind of, again, comes back down to, can the government be trusted? I don't believe so in large part. I mean, again, I think if we give it a limited amount of power and its primary purpose is to protect our property and to protect our lives, that would be great. And so I think a lot of folks who voted for Trump kind of fall into that camp because they saw that he kind of pulled back. He kind of got rid of some regulations and dropped some taxes and got us out of some wars. And that's what they want. They want that to continue. Flip side of that, COVID hits, and he's saying, let the states handle it. And they're like, you have no plan. You're responsible for 230,000 deaths. He's not responsible. He just said, look, y'all, let the scientists dictate what you think you should do. So again, it's just a difference in worldview. People who voted for Trump aren't voting because they're happy that 230,000 people have died from COVID. That's not the reason. It just comes down to a difference in what's the role of government. The other passage I'll read is in the New Testament, Romans chapter 13. Again, this is not talking about any sort of social safety net stuff because that did not exist in governments. So this is where I think we need to exercise our right to vote, yes, but we also need to trust that God is in control. There's other passages that I didn't look up, and now I'm not going to sit here and search for them because I don't want to take the time. I'll probably end up putting them in the descriptions for you to look up later. And that is having to do with just how the Lord directs. Like there's the verse in Proverbs about how the Lord directs the actions of the king. The king's heart is like channels of water in the Lord's hand. And that's talking about any king. That could be talking about some dictator in Africa or, President Xi in China or whoever. God is in control of the kings of the earth. If you're a Christian, that's what you got to believe. Even if you don't like Trump and you didn't vote for him, God was as much in control of what Trump's going to do as he is in control of what Biden's going to do, or Trump will continue to do if Trump wins. At this point, we don't know. Romans chapter 13, submission to governing authorities. And everybody wants to pull this out when it's their guy in office and the other ones, they want to point to the opposite camp and say, look, guys, you need to submit because we as Christians, we should be submitting. I know you don't like Trump, but you need to submit. I know you like Biden, but you need to submit. And no one wants to do it for themselves. Everybody wants to be like, when it's not your person who wins, then everybody's like rending their garments and throwing ash over their heads and not my president, hashtag not my president. That's not what Romans says. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority, and this is an authority that was a dictator. I mean, this is the Roman emperor putting people's heads on pikes. It might not have been Nero at this time. I'm just saying, it ended up being that. It was authorities that did not like the Christians, that's for sure. Whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? This just requires a little bit of self-examination. Am I like working hard? Am I obeying the law? Am I being respectful to, those in authority can just be the police officers, the ones you want to defund. But when they pull you over, are you showing them respect? They deserve it because they've been put in authority by God. even if they're not good police officers. But most of them are good police officers. I believe that. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? Then do what is right and you will be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. Now, I just want to point one thing out right there. Because again, as we say, somebody may not be a believer in God who's in a position of authority. How can they be God's servant if they're not necessarily serving God? And the word here, servant, is diakonos. It's the same word that we get deacon from in the church. The deacons are the servants of the church. And ultimately, someone in authority, whether that's a police officer or a state representative or the president of the United States, that person may not even realize they're serving God. They're serving God. The president of China is serving God. Putin is serving God. And at this point, you may be like, I'm pulling the plug, Rachel. You're crazy. You're saying crazy stuff. He is not talking about Christian servants here. He's talking about pagan people in Romans 13. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. Do you believe it? But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. Again, it says they are God's servants, agents of wrath, to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. If you're a Christian, we should be submitting to whoever winds up being in power out of a matter of conscience. No Christian should say hashtag not my president. That's not Christian. That's anti-Christian. That goes in direct opposition to the word of God. I was looking at my notes and now I got sidetracked. So, we should exercise our right to vote. We should look at one another as being multidimensional people. If you cannot do that on social media, maybe you need to pull back from social media, because that's really hampering your ability to see other people as thinking human beings who aren't just hate-filled. I want to just real quickly wrap up with government control of education. You're like, wait, you're starting here. No, Rachel, no, you're down to one little thing. This kind of comes back to those who, how do we see the government? How do we see people? I think public education is a good thing. An educated public is good for the country. You don't want this huge gap in like certain people that get educated and all these other people are just dumb and they just have to go work the fields or something, like that. And this gap has closed considerably in the last 100 to 200 years. So I'm okay with public education. But again, the problem comes down to what is the purpose of public education and can the government be trusted? I ultimately don't believe the government can be trusted. So while I do want public education, I want it to be to teach reading, writing, arithmetic, the basics. Some fine arts. Fine arts are fantastic. I got my degree in college was in music education. Fine arts benefited me all through school. I want my children to be taught history, science. I don't want them to be indoctrinated with a worldview of how the government thinks they should see reality, and how they should see each other, how they should see themselves. I want to be in charge of that. And people who see government as good and responsible for the social safety net, they don't trust those parents that want to homeschool their kids, because who knows what you're going to teach them. But see, the folks on the other side, whether they like public education or not, say, no, the parents, it is our responsibility first and foremost to educate our children. I may choose to send my children to public school, but the responsibility is still primarily my own. I'm offloading them. I'm offloading, the reading and the writing and the science and the social studies and the fine arts. And I'm supplementing those things at home. But it's not the government's responsibility to take away rights that I have to educate my children. That should not be. And if you propose that, you're messed up in the head. So that's another issue we have going on right now in education, and that's really part of what has led to a lot of the disruption. Now, people coming into college and coming out of college, and you got these Gen Zers and these millennials, and they think all this stuff because they didn't just go through school just getting an education. They went through school getting an indoctrination to a worldview. And as Christians, we haven't been teaching our children a Christian worldview. We haven't been teaching them the Bible, biblical literacy. So they come out and they want to use the Bible just to kind of, they just want to kind of weave it into their worldview and make themselves feel better and say, I believe in God and I believe in Jesus and Jesus died for my sins. But ultimately, I'm going to abandon that if it doesn't make sense with this worldview that I've established aside from the Bible. And as parents, we need to learn the Bible. We need to give them that biblical worldview so that they can look at what's going on in their education and they can say, that doesn't line up. Thanks for teaching about the Civil War, but I'm going to leave that critical race theory stuff off on the side because that's not biblical. So again, comes down to those two camps. Are people innately evil? The government cannot be trusted, and we only should really need it for law and order and to protect our property. Or do you think people are innately good? The government can be trusted, and it should be our social safety net. Or are you like me and you're kind of somewhere in the middle, but I'm leaning a little more over here on this side? I don't trust the government, but I know we need it for a whole lot of stuff. So I'm all for having it, but I just don't want to give it so much power. So those are my thoughts. Weigh in. Let me know what you think. See y'all next time on The Way I See It. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. I said at the very end. I should have said at the beginning. But please subscribe and like and leave me a comment and all that good stuff. All right. Let's see. I'm going to turn this off here. And now I'm still live on YouTube. I'm going to turn it off here. Bye, YouTube.